our speaker for tonight, a very dear friend of mine. She co-founded UX San Antonio and is the main engine behind us. She works at HEB, and I have worked with her for many, many years. She's incredible. She is the most curious mind for UX information. Any book about UX, I would bet you she has it on her shelf. She just really enjoys studying the craft. She also is very generous with her time and her knowledge. So she's going to share some really exciting tools that she's using in her work as a user researcher. Sherry?
Thanks, Susan, for that great introduction. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if you can stop sharing yours. There we go. Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited to share this with you because I'm one of those people, if I find something that's exciting and new, I want to share it with everybody I know so can make sure they benefit from it as well. So, but I did want to point out one thing, Susan, on our donations. We also have private donations coming in, and you can donate on our website as well. So real excited about that. So anyway, so welcome to the presentation on user story mapping. This is a communication tool for Agile teams, and I'll explain a little bit more about the tool part in just a moment. But the method of user story mapping is for UX practitioners. And I may mention a few other systems or methods or techniques. If you have questions about those, just put it in the chat or make a note and we can circle back to that. But I did want to note that Avion is the sponsor for tonight, and they have given me access to their tool so that I can show you how it all comes together in the end on the digital product. So I'm excited to share that with you. But so I did want to do a disclaimer. This is from my own experience, and I'm sharing what's worked for me and my team. But please adjust your methods and definitions and things like that that may work better for you. So I'm not the expert on this, but it's really helped me. And who am I? So I have been in the IT industry since 2006, for about 16 years now. I've worked with many IT companies, including I've been a web producer, a project manager, UI producer, and UX researcher, now serving as the systems analyst for HEB, which is named that because of just how they needed to get me into the team. So it's kind of the same for them. And I've worked with agencies and large enterprises. As you can see, there's some IdeaWire and Public Alliance are small companies that are just mom and pops here in San Antonio. But Aristotle and FFW were agencies, large full service agencies, and then iHeart and USAA, of course, are large enterprise companies. And HEB is an enterprise company as well. And I'm working on the internal with employees on the supply chain. So it's really exciting and but challenging. So that's why tools like this help a lot. I moved to San Antonio in 2011 and have been a part of the UX community since then. And I'm currently serving as the president of UXSA, as she mentioned, and I'd love to help others learn and transition to the UX world. So how many have y'all seen this project? I mean, this image before? To raise a hands, use your hands to raise. See how many of y'all have seen this before? No? Oh, a few of you. Okay, good. All right. So if you look at this picture as a whole, you see this, of course, it's an elephant. We can see it from our angle, from our perspective. But from each one of those people's perspective, they think it's something else based on where they're sitting, right? Right where they are. So who is correct? Well, they all are in their perspective, right? So what we need is to make sure that we're communicating with each other in the way that we can all understand it. And that's why there's tools like what I'm going to show you tonight, the user story mapping. And communication is the key in meeting the business and user needs, bringing them together. You have to make sure you capture and generate the requirements before any work is done. You have to know and understand the need and agree on a solution before spending money on the development. This is really, really important. So the role of the project managers and business analysts and things like that are to capture, and everybody who's working on the team actually, to capture the business needs and communicate them. They need to be communicated through the design, development, and anyone who's on that team. You should all know what the business needs are and that sort of thing. So if as a researcher, I need to know the business needs as well. So then we can use things like diagrams. You've seen like service blueprints and documentations, just writing out just pages and pages of notes, and Confluence and Jira and all these different tools that are used to communicate the information of the needs. And as a role of the user researcher, mine is to learn the needs of the user, and then translate that and communicate that to the team so that we can take the business needs and the user needs and find the solution that beats both. Okay. So, and it's really difficult because you see that these people looking at this elephant, they have their own perspective. And this is a really simplified view of what happens when you have your own biases and assumptions. I don't know if y'all have ever seen this or not, but this is the cognitive bias codex, and there's over 100 biases that we have in our own brain that we don't even realize that are, we know that we've heard of, prejudice and other biases and things like that, cognitive dissonance and all of that we've heard, but there's so many more things that change our perspective of what we're seeing. So we need to make sure that we're, you don't have to learn every single one of these, but there's a lot of common ones in the work that you're going to be doing. So it's good to be aware of them. And there's ways that you can, well, let me back up just a second. Your brain makes assumptions and fills in blanks for us using these biases, and it's part of our makeup. This is why what makes us human. Your brain has to fill in the blanks. And so we're making these unconscious biases, and we're not even aware of it. But as UX researchers and UXers, you should at least be aware of this and use methods to counteract your bias. And that is things like collaboration, sourcing the information, like not making assumptions, use data, and most importantly, just being aware of it. Like, am I biased? Am I looking at this the wrong way? And I put the source here that you can look at this to pull more information if you're interested in that. But this is fascinating on itself. So just wanted to share that. But the most important thing is what I have learned in my career is do not communicate so that someone can understand. You communicate so they cannot misunderstand. And there's a difference. And if you just think about it, we'll say it one more time. Do not communicate so that someone can understand. Communicate so they cannot misunderstand. So it may take a couple of passes of reading the same sentence over and over and that sort of thing, or looking at a diagram and that sort of thing. But thinking it through makes a big difference. You can catch some really big communication biases or errors by changing your perspective of how you communicate. So what we're here for now is the user story mapping. But to get there as this method of communication, we're going to have to learn a few things. I just wanted to make sure I get you the background that you need that sets this up, that makes the user story mapping possible. So as a researcher on the development team, it is critical to get information to the team in the most efficient way. They have not spent the hours that I have sitting with people and learning their craft, learning their job, and they don't know about what they do and why they need to see it and how fast they need to know the information. They don't know all those things. So I need to communicate that very clearly without question, again, so that they can't misunderstand. So this method of user story mapping keeps everyone aware of the priorities, the steps, the needs of the user, and all of that. So in order to give you the background, and we're going to briefly talk about Agile methodology. There's a whole, I could spend a week on that. Don't get me started. So, but we can give you information on that if you want to learn more about Agile methodology, but if you're already aware of it, you should pick it right up. What is mapping? And I know it seems very elementary, but I just want to make sure we have the same foundation of what mapping means. And then what is a user story? Some of you are used understand this terminology, but for those of you who don't, we're just going to go over a brief description of what that is. And then using user story mapping and how we can communicate with using this tool or this method. So a user story, UX, let me back up. UX is a bridge between business and user needs, as I said before, and communication is the key to meet both of those. We have to communicate the business needs and the user needs. You have to make sure you capture or generate the requirements before doing any work. You must understand the problem and the needs of both before spending any money on development, as I've said before. And it should be tested before going to development with prototype and at least design reviews with users and the business before giving to development. This helps you catch things early and fix them. This is the whole point of UX, is that we're trying to solve the problems and test it, make sure it's viable, make sure it's good. And then you can move forward without messing up, spending extra money or time. The role of project managers and businesses capture all of that. And I wanted to kind of show you how they all fit together, because this is all can be captured in this user story. So you've got business needs, user needs, documentation, the development, and the design. All is needed to make the user story. Okay. So now that we see that they're all connected and they can make this user story is the center. Okay. So Agile, let's talk about Agile for just a moment. The difference between Agile and waterfall methodology. Agile is continuous cycles. You break things down, you plan it, you design it, you develop it, you release it, you track and monitor it, and then you go to the next priority and do the requirements and plan and design. So it's just iterative. On a waterfall, you gather all the requirements, then you do the design, then you do the implementation, and then you do verification with the testing, and then you do some maintenance. Well, here there's no room for no flexibility to change, no flexibility to back up and say, wait, maybe that's not what I wanted. So it's a little bit more rigid. Waterfall is less forgiving, and with software development, website development, and even business needs change, user needs change. So it's good to have the flexibility to go in and do these. And in the Agile, it's usually done on 2 to 4 weeks sprints. So within 2 to 4 weeks, you're doing one feature or 2 features or a group that y'all have decided on. So this is where we are going to be working in the Agile space. A little bit more about Agile is most people think that Agile is this, like if we're going to build, this is going to be the end result. We're going to need to build the tire and then the chassis and the tires and then the body of the car, and then we get a full car. That is not what it is. Agile is creating something. I need a vehicle. You need to travel more efficiently. That's the need. I need to travel more efficiently. Okay. So skateboard requires balance and a big learning curve, and it isn't suited for all ages and body types. Okay. Then the bicycle, that's the next iteration, is we're going to come out with the scooter. And then that's a little bit better. It doesn't help me, it keeps my balance a little bit better, but it's not exactly what I need. So the bicycle is a better solution. It goes a little bit longer distances and does it, it still uses my own body power, but it's not, doesn't hold as much as I need to. And maybe I need to have another person, And the motorcycle gives me a lot more power. I can go longer distances. I can, use this for maybe more than one space, depending on the type of motorcycle. But the car gives me the space that I need for more than one person. It gives me the speed and the power to go longer distances. So this is the final result, but they have something to work with as they go. Okay. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. So let's talk about the user for a moment. So the user is the person who is using the software or the website. They're operating something, especially computer, other machine. We're in tech, IT. User research translates it into an output of an archetype. So an archetype to me, most people have said personas. And the reason I am separating persona from archetype is because personas were usually used interchangeably with marketing personas. And marketing personas have a lot of demographic information. And archetypes focus really on the job duties. So let's think about a cashier at the store. I need to know what that cashier is doing and when they're doing it and how they're doing it. I don't care what their age is. I don't care what their, I do care if they're disabled and they need extra accommodations, but that doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman or have children or their age or any of those things, right? It doesn't make any difference. My focus is the job to be done. So I changed this I use archetype for myself. As I said, you can change your definitions as you need to, but I use archetype because it's a typical example of somebody performing company duties. Okay. And that's what we're trying to get them to do more efficiently. And it focuses on the goals, the needs, the pain points, the motivation of what they need to do, and their ideas. Okay. It has nothing to do with any demographic information. All right. So a user story is a situation viewed in terms of information known about it or the similarity to another. Putting it into context, basically setting the plot, the conflict, the resolution, a discussion about the needs. It's a place where you can say, this is what I need. So in the technical world, we write user stories and they are usually formatted in a specific way. So the user story for Agile is broken down from an epic, which is the project name. And then we have a story, which is, something for the team to accomplish. And then the task is broken down by developer. And then there could be some subtasks as well. And they could be dependent or independent of each other. They're all working towards the same goal. And to keep all of this, straight and to keep, make sure all of the information is shared. Like I said, you're communicating so that they cannot misunderstand. They must be from the user's perspective. And the developer decides how to meet the criteria. I'm not micromanaging and telling them this is how you need to do it. I'm just saying, as a persona, I'm saying persona archetype, as this person, I want to do something so that I can do what? And make sure those things are answered. And it helps you figure that out. It gives you the formula to plug and play. And then you have acceptance criteria. And there's additional reference there for Ultimate Guide to User Story Maps. It's really great. So that'll help you. But I wanted to kind of give you some examples. So a teacher. So as a teacher, I want to see a list of all my students with their grades so I can access the needs of the students by class more quickly, see who needs the most help. and where. My second period class, they seem to be having a rougher time. And then the acceptance criteria must be viewable on one screen. I want to see it in one view and exclude the weekend days. Does that make sense? And then another example would be manager. As a manager, I want to review the open projects by day, week, and month on my mobile device, so I can accurately forecast the workload away from my desk while I'm away from my desk. An acceptance criteria might be viewable on my phone 24/7. And it displays the weekend. It includes weekend days. So these are user stories, and that's basically some examples and the framework of user stories, okay? So now that we've got all the pieces and parts, we're about to go into mapping, and then we'll be into the user story mapping. So what is mapping? Like I said, it may be an elementary definition for you, but in the UX world, we use mapping for many different things. We're used to the maps that you see on the right, and that is giving us, it gives us an association of group of elements or qualities of the equivalent group according to a particular formula. Show me all the restaurants within 15 minutes of me, right? Or show me the hotels, or show me those kind of things. So where's the nearest HEB, right? So you look at those kind of things and you can see where it is relative to everything else, or from where you are. So it's really important to have the map so that you can understand where you are and where you're going. That's the same thing, the same idea and concept for journey mapping and customer journeys. And I was really trying to use this method for the project that I'm working on, but it just was not fitting in. It just did not fit because it's very geared towards customer journeys and customers' interaction with the brand. So if they have a journey, this is they start here and they end here, and the stages may be like they see. They see the ad on the newspaper or something, and this is how they're interacting with the brand. They see the ad on TV, and then they go to the store, and then they do this and they do that, and they return it, and all of this. So this is the stages in which they were doing this, and then these are the moments that happen. And that's all great for a customer journey and how it interacts with the brand, but I'm trying to communicate a user's needs to a developer, and this is not meeting that need. Now, this is one of my favorite books is Orchestrating Experiences, and it's published by Rosenfeld Media, and we have a link here we can share with you. But it's so exciting to me to read that book, and it's helped me so much. And this is a great tool if you're working with direct customer and brand interaction. But it's not fitting the bill for what I needed. So I kept looking, and I came across user story maps. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me see what this is. This is a little bit different than the journey mapping. So let's see what that is. Anatomy of user story map. So then we have this backbone. It's much like the stages and things we had before, but it's got activities. This is more of the jobs to be done. What are they doing? And then the steps it takes to do these activities. And then you have task broken down here. And then you have the release 1 and release 2. So this is showing priority. This is making more sense to me about how I can share this information to the developer, right? So I actually was talking about this and putting this together, and we put it out on Meetup, and this company, Avion, came up to me. They contacted me through LinkedIn. They're based in the UK, and he said, we really want to talk to you. So they were able to, sponsor us for this meeting, and had a great discussion with them. They gave me a demo of their product, and it really helped me a lot, because doing this in 2D or even on a whiteboard, like a Miro board or Mural, any of those kind of things, it's very, very tedious and very I don't know, just time consuming, right? So they said, let me show you what we have, and I will show you how it works at the end, and you'll be just like, yay. So so just let's go over the story map. So they gave me this material so we can kind of talk about it a little bit more. So before we had let's go back. So we just had the activities and the steps and the task and the releases. So looking at it from this, they broke it down into the backbone. It's the backbone of the story map. So it's user-focused backlog. It's a list of things that need to be done, but through the user's point of view. Let's go back into the elephant, right? So user's point of view, we're going to make sure this is laid out by the user, user's perspective. So the top two rows are known as the backbone, and this use this to map out the core user journeys of your product. And that could be, the cashier is that right here. The floor manager is here, and that sort of. So how are they working together? They're all working together on certain things. So we need to be able to organize all of those in one big picture. Again, making a map. Okay. Again, we have the priorities, and then we have the stories and releases. So let's go a little bit further. Defining the backbone. So just walk through the product journey with the team and map it out horizontally. This is chronological underneath here. And you probably would keep it chronological through finding accommodation, book accommodation, that sort of thing, through the task itself. Because remember, this is activities. And it could be a person, it could be the activities, but you'll see how I use it in a little bit. This is a little bit from the example, which is Airbnb. So then we scope out the features, and these are all the different things that can be done under find accommodation. I don't know if you can, I hope y'all can see this. It may be too small. Are y'all still seeing it? Find accommodation, then it says
Smaller
search.
for me, not bigger.
Okay, sorry. Well, poo. It's not stretching. I will send y'all a link for all of this so y'all can get into it more later. But the first thing across here, this is for Airbnb, is find accommodation, book accommodation, manage my property. So in Airbnb, you've got these three main activities. Under find accommodation, you've got search for a place to stay, browse listings, or view a listing. So under those, let's say search for a place to stay. What do I need to do to search for a place to stay? I need to search by location. I need the location to autocomplete for me because I don't want to type every single one of them out, right? And just like you coast, okay, good. And then add check-in and check-out dates. And then calendar date picker. Make a calendar date picker so that I can, use this easier.
Sherry,
yeah.
Can I ask you to try to make this full screen? We're seeing a whole bunch of black around the window.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have a better view of this. I'll just keep going through this basic one. We're almost to examples. So okay. If that'll be better, you'll see them at a bigger screen. So as you can see, we've got the planning. You're using user story mapping. You can use it to prioritize. You can use it to align with your team and for them to take it for delivery. And Avion's tool actually connects you straight into Jira. And let me show you how that works. All right. So I'm just going to show you some 2D examples. Like I told you, this was kind of tedious. And this is a little bit another example. We've got a high level goal here, and this is to customize coffee and order coffee. This is, customers can get customized coffee beans. So then they have user activities. They're going to choose the beans. They're going to choose the syrup. They're going to enter their address, and they're going to pay for it. So then we have subtask. So just going through each one of these, and you see that there's secondary and primary priorities. So Then we have another example, and this is organize email, manage calendar, manage the contacts, but it's broken down by organize email, search email. You have to be able to search it and file it. And then you have to search by keyword. And you can see that there's a breakdown. Every time you go down further, one more step underneath it, it breaks it down just a little bit more. All right. So now we're going to go to the example from Avion with the Airbnb. And I'm hoping you can see this sign up. Can you see my screen still? Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So you see on here, there's the find the accommodation. There's a search for a place to stay. Search by location. This is what we were trying to look at bigger earlier. Location autocomplete, right? And then there's sort by ratings. So there's browse listings. So see, all this is like really nested underneath that activity at the top. So you're able to do that. You're also able in a digital, the way they made it digital, you're able to connect to, make them dependent on each other. You're also able to connect them this way. And you can go in and put information. Are you seeing the pop-up?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you can get a link in here and connect it, share it with anybody. You can add tags. You can add the personas that go with it or the archetypes, as I said. You can attach things just like you can with a Jira ticket or user story. Put a description. This is where you put your story, you know, as a blank, I would like to, you know, this so I can, and then put your acceptance criteria in here and put any comments or, you know, people can put in questions. So this is your actual activity. And then this one is the same thing. You can put tags and you can put a status to it. It's ready for development. It needs design. It needs this. You can put it in the state. And then this has got user criteria in here, the user story. So this is the acceptance criteria. And they're using a format called given. So some people use the given and when and then. So those are great tools to use as well. And then you could add a linked card to it and make sure it's connected to the story. If there's a block, you can do that. And you can also move these around. So if you decide, no, I'm not going to do that one now, we're going to wait and do that on the second release. And then move it back. We can move it back. You can color code these to be different colors and move them around, change things. So it brings all of that user story information that I was talking about, you know, makes it digital, very, very easy. I was able to fill mine out with 5 different people that I have done research on. I was able to go in and add all of these things in like 15, 20 minutes instead of, can you imagine building this out with Post-it notes and all of that stuff? But the tool is really, really helpful. But the tediousness of putting it together has been made easy by the, you know, the digital process. So let's go over here to the right lister property. And then they have, you know, the next ones, you can change these right here to ratings and reviews, make that the next release. You also have booking notifications. Maybe that's the next release because you want to look at this. I want to show the side. See that map on the side? You can see where you are in the map and you can resize it and you can see all of the things that are unplanned. This is unplanned and everything underneath it. So this is kind of like your backlog, but you're able to move it around and keep it in the same storyline with all of the other activities and things that relate to the user. And then you can add more than one user that's using that feature and that sort of stuff. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you're excited about this and that you are going to look into it. And we do have a because of their sponsorship, we do have a trial, and they said they would be happy to demo it for anyone who's interested. But I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm just trying to show you the beauty of the method, and then Avion has really made it come to life. So I hope that y'all enjoyed that, and if y'all have any questions, let me know.
You want us to raise our hand or just jump in?
Whatever you like.
I guess I'm jumping in.
Let's jump in, and then if it gets too chaotic, we'll go back to chat.
All right. Okay. This is Louise, and I'm curious. Hi. Thank you, Sherry, for that. It's very interesting. I'm curious, what does Avion publish their pricing online, or is it contact us and then we'll talk to you?
No, it's online. It's $49 for 3 seats.
How much? I'm sorry, I talked right over that.
$49.
Oh, okay.
For a month, I think, for 3 seats. And of course, that's not enterprise wide, but the enterprise, you need to talk to them so they can accommodate.
Right, right.
It's pretty reasonable.
Sherry, can you go back to the slide that talked about what elements are in the user story? What data elements a user story needs to have in it?
Sure.
We had a question about like where do the jobs to be done go, and how does that compare to the user story?
Okay. All right. So the jobs to be done, that's a method in itself that it has its own book as well. and I should get the list for that to give to you. But jobs to be done is basically focusing on what is the user trying to do. So this is where you translate it into the user story. And so, as a person who is trying to hang a picture, I want to drill a hole so that I could hang my picture on a nail, right? Without making very much damage. So that I'm taking the person and what they're trying to do and the job to be done and focusing it on that user story. Does that make sense?
In that example, Sherry, I think one of the beautiful things about jobs to be done is it focuses on the user's goal more than the how. So one of the real problems with business requirements is that a project sponsor or a product owner will tell you how to do something. Let people hammer nails into the sheetrock in order to hang a picture. Is not as useful as the user wants to hang a picture. Because if you give them the goal, a design team the goal instead, they might come up with something like that 3M command picture hanging.
Right.
Solution. You'll get a lot more innovation and innovative thinking by couching your user stories in terms of what the user wants to do. That's why it's got the blanks in the order that they have. And I've seen it where they just say, as a, supply chain engineer, I want to enter the latest,
data, right?
So that, but they leave off the so that.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe entering the input sheet isn't the right thing. Maybe we can be a lot more efficient if the user story is couched in terms of that final goal and why, the whole why, the what
the
and
benefit.
why.
What's the benefit?
So when
of
you're
this
in a job and you are being given these detailed business requirements that have all of the how embedded in them, try to push back gently, professionally, but ask your people to give you the what and the why instead of the how, and leave the how to the team.
Yes, to the people who know the best way to solution that with the tools and the skill set that they have. Great point. Thank you.
Sorry, I get off my soapbox.
No, that's why you're here.
And I'm just wondering, and maybe I missed something earlier, or following that same line, what if at this point they're still working on symptoms and not root problems. As a store clerk, I'm trying to think of something that would be more like a symptom. I want more time to check out, right? Or I want my lines not to be so long, or they're focusing on something that's not the root problem.
Right.
So how do you take that back?
Right. So here's an example. Let me think of one. If you
Okay.
if they give you a user story that when I log back in, I get put back where I wanted to be, where I was the last time I was out on the site. And so what you use is a technique called 5 whys.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get handed that, like, why do they need to be put back on the screen that they were on before? It's because there's an auto log off. So maybe you can have a discussion about whether the time, until the auto log off happens needs to be extended. Does that make sense?
Right. Or a reminder to them saying, we're about to log off. Are you still there and want more time or something like that? There's all different kinds of solutions. They just need more time.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing that space for the solutioning to be with the team is the goal of this.
BiPi put in the chat, I wonder, is the use case more from waterfall and the user story is more for Agile?
Yeah, that sounds like it fits better. Kira, you had your hand up for a while. What's your question?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. This has been helpful for me in I've worked more in like market research and within design teams, and I'm now in a role where I'm working more directly with kind of embedded in development projects or around development teams. And I've just been in kind of the prep stages, but very confused about how the two overlap. And so this is kind of beginning insight into that. That being said, I'm curious kind of what your communication around this tool is to non-UX folks, and what is their role in shaping and developing the user story as well. Because I think one way I could imagine it happening is you using research that you have conducted to kind of inform, but I'm wondering how that lands with engineers or whoever's kind of consuming the information.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, developers are used to the user stories. That's where they get their information, most of them that I've worked with, and they use a Jira or some other type of product that has user stories and tasks and epics and things like that in it. So this is directly talking to them. It's like, I'm walking up to them at the elephant, the picture I showed before. There's an elephant. I don't know if y'all remember that. Let me go back to it. Right here, where I'm going up to this person who says, this is a tree. And I'm pulling her back and saying, no, look, it's an elephant, right? So by using that, I'm talking to them in a way that they understand and that they expect to have the information. Like, how do I know what to solve for if you don't tell me what the problem is, or you don't tell me what the user needs? So this is the way to communicate to them. This is something they're used to. This is the language they're used to reading. And they also, this can go straight in and be pushed straight into Jira. So the project manager, the planning, all of those kind of stuff can work in here and then push it into planning, into Jira. So yeah, as Susan said, Asana is another common tool that does that. There's a lot of them that do that, but this one is specifically from user story mapping. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that does. Yes, it does. I guess follow up, and maybe it was entangled within that too, is this something that as a user researcher or designer that you kind of develop separately from them and then provide to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. This is a tool. This is the method in which I'm going to communicate to the business team, to the design team, to the developers. This is my communication tool. I'm not just writing out a story. I am showing them in this format that under find accommodation, these are these three things that need to happen. These three activities need to happen under find accommodation. Under search for a place to stay, they need to search by location and they need the location autocomplete. Now, there's all these down here. And this is where the business, the team, and the project managers, the leadership, everybody can come together and look at all the different things that need to be done and prioritize them from here, because now they're all broken down into the needs, right? So that's where we can communicate and keep it all there. Now I've documented everything that needs to be done. Now let's put it in priority of what we can take on, how much money we have, how much time we have, all of those things. I don't know any of those things. All I know is what the needs are, right? So I just need to document it and then they help prioritize and put it in order. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really
You're
helpful.
welcome. Okay, any other questions? Comment.
Put something in the chat that is some examples of user stories and the different elements, we were talking in the chat earlier, Agile is different in different teams, in different organizations. But Agile is a wonderful step in the right direction, because even just having something that's a user story rather than business requirements, it's from the user's perspective. And that right there is a huge win for UX and human-centered design. But some of the things that it might have, it's the story with the fill in the blank kind of Mad Lib that Sherry shared before. As some kind of user, I want to perform some task so that I achieve some goal. And often a user story will have acceptance criteria that as the product owner, I will not accept your designed solution unless it meets these criteria.
Right. And that's where I was giving the examples before. It needs to be in one view or it's not usable to me.
Right.
It needs to be on one screen.
Also, designers and developers in the Agile shops that I'm working with use these user stories, and they have discussions about how long it's going to take, and you assign story points in Agile. And in one of those, remember Sherry was talking about a 2-week sprint or a 4-week sprint, and we can accept a certain amount of work. And so we decide how much work we can get done by assigning story points. And then after a certain number of points, you're full up and you can't get any more work squeezed into that sprint.
Yeah, and a user story is basically a discussion point of the user's needs. It does not decide what it takes to get it done. That's for the team to decide, and the practitioners, the developers, the designers, to work on that problem. That's the problem to solve. So it's just putting it there to discuss it. Sometimes I've been in user grooming sessions, which is part of the Agile ceremonies, and they decide to break it up into 2 stories or 3 stories and decide that this is too much for one thing, or they've decided they can add it to another story because both of those are really small and they can be done together. So this is just a tool to get the discussion and the need documented. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Any other questions?
Sherry, I'm assuming that if there were, since you are discussing, and if there's, like you said, you might break these into 2 stories, there might be some things going on, but if there was a decision made, not just on the programming, but let's say on the development, but on the, some standard, we've, realized, well, we need to do this. We've noticed that this is happening now, or we're going to do it this way. We've made a decision that we're not going to allow XYZ, right? Are you documented within this user story? Do you have some other things that you're documenting, some bigger decisions, some overall decisions, or do you start here, start with these stories to keep the teams aligned, the business, the developers, the
Right.
etc.
Well, like I said, this is the discussion point, and it can be broken out into different things. It can be taken up to the epic level, which you're talking about, like the project itself, or the at the project level, and just business decisions be made, and it's blocked by the business decision. So I can't do this until I get the answer from business. This is just a discussion point of the need. That's it. How it's solutioned, what happens to it, the priority of when it's done, all of that is left up to the team to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's what they're doing in Jira, for instance, or some other solution.
Yes, Autumn. Take off your mute.
I love the presentation. Thank you so much. I did an internship at a startup Agile company, and there are not very many people. It's not like Acme Amalgamated, where we have teams of people and a big cafeteria and, a gym or something. It's like I meet a lot of people, or I've known people from the program that I did, who might work at some little bitty company, and sort of like what I did an internship at, where it's all agile, every morning there's a morning meeting with the two developers, but the rest of it, to me, they have the backlog and they're doing all that, but trying to put together all the user stories and user mapping. What if there's only one or two, we'll say even one UX person? How does that shake out if there's not a whole team of you? Can this not work?
Yeah, I think this is a great tool. I think this helps bridge that gap, actually. This is a method that bridges that gap because, like you're saying, there's different ways. If you're doing Kanban, Agile, or Scrum, either way, this would work. User stories are used in both of those. The only difference is when they're picked up. With the like I said, I can spend a week on Agile alone. There's so many different ways to do it, and like Susan said in the chat, it's done so many different ways. If you learn the concept of it and the ceremonies of it and that sort of thing, they're all done for a reason. But this right here is the tool. This user story mapping is the method in which I communicate the user's needs. Instead of just writing it on a sticky note and putting it on the wall, I'm putting it in context with other things, with that duty of that person, right? In the order which they need to do it. And I'm breaking it down to the user's needs at that time that they need it. So this, to me, is a method that can help everybody get aligned, business priorities and all of that, so they can see it from the user side. So I hope that helps. That answers your question.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Susan. I have another one, Sherry, because thinking about this right now, we've got people doing Agile in different ways, and there's some people working on bringing it together into one methodology, right? And having UX as part of that methodology. So, but what I've typically heard people talk about is developers or coders. Well, I'll take it one further, because they're saying developers, anybody on the team working on this, including somebody in a UX role or a UX practitioner. But you might have other people making these stories. So do you, in how you're practicing it right now, do you do all the user stories and communicate those then with the developers, the coders, the actual people who make the solution? or do
No.
they create some too, and then you kind of review them? So,
Right. Right now, this is a collaboration with the project manager
mhm.
because she knows a lot of the business needs. I know the user needs. So we work together on creating the user stories. I can put down the needs and then she can, either she'll know right off the bat, like this is not going to be done right now. We got to move that to the next quarter. She can help prioritize it quickly. She can also help make sure the criteria, acceptance criteria is met because she knows other requirements that I don't.
Mhm.
All I am doing is just providing the user's point of view, and she can help build it out from there. So like I said, this is just a discussion point to get things started.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm a hologram. Yeah, this to me, this is just a tool to get things started and a collaboration tool to dig down deep on the needs. Does that make
Sherry,
sense?
do you mind going back to the mapping slide for a second? Because I get user stories and I use those, but what we're not doing in the shop that I'm about halftime in these days is the mapping, the Avion view that had the line between them.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I want to talk through is how does the mapping make us more agile? And I think the answer might be you're trying to deliver a unit of usable value that will end up in the code that you could actually release.
Yes.
It's a way of getting to minimum viable. And you didn't really use that word, but there's a very important concept of minimum viable product. Louise is pioneering a minimum viable experience at the city of San Antonio. And I think it's a really hard thing to do because we want to provide all the things. But what I think this would help us do is if we could deliver, if we go back to thinking about the walking and then the scooter and then the motorcycle all the way to car, it'll take too long for us to get to release, to market with a feature or some value. If you focus on this one tiny bit at a time, you can give people relief. You can make their experience better, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So have you used this at HEB?
Yes.
And is it proving to be helpful in figuring out what you should release when?
Yes, absolutely. Because so far the project manager has a list of all the things that need to be done, but they're trying to figure out how it fits into the individual experiences. Like, is this going to be helpful to this person versus that person? And we want to prioritize something that's going to help everyone across the board, sooner rather than later. And if it's done by 10 people or it affects this much money, then we need to move that up on the priority list. So this helps him.
For PI planning, program increment planning.
Yes.
Needs to happen at the portfolio level or at the epic level. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And we're doing this for our roadmap. We're doing this for, individual, and it goes all the way down to the actual developer user grooming for that. So it's carrying it through using the same language. And that's what
we're using a lot of Agile jargon, and I'm sorry for it. Yeah. But what we have, the suggestion is maybe we should have an Agile coach come and walk us through some of the basics of Agile.
Yeah.
Some of these people on here are following Agile, and we all follow those slightly different variants. But it would be interesting to talk through as a group. What are the differences and what are the advantages of making those different choices?
Yeah.
And
I knew at UXSA
that you could say in a job interview that you have some familiarity.
Yeah. I'm just going to say at USAA, I was on two different teams, and one of them did Kanban Agile and the other one did Scrum. And I'm hearing an echo on your side, Susan.
Autumn has a question.
Echo on your side, Susan.
My question is when, I loved your visual, your illustration of what Agile is not and what it is.
Mhm.
And when I was in this internship, they talked a lot about the minimum viable product, and they were already had something released. I mean, the software could be demoed at the time, but if you were just starting out, like you were going to make a new app for HEB, a phone app or something for HEB, and when you talk about the minimum viable product, like what is it that you could release that users will say customers, shoppers could use if it's not the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, you would prioritize the features. And all of those, the priorities take in a lot of information, as in, how much skill set do we have to release it? How much time do we have to release it? How fast can it be done? And what is the highest need of the user? You wouldn't want to be putting out a mobile app that does not have features that are usable by the user, or that are not what they think are important. You want to say, oh, this is amazing. If they're using it for that one thing only, then that's what you want them to do. But if you can say, I can release 3 features at one time, and then we can add the lower priority features later, that's the way that the priority would be set up. But it's all discussion between the business and the development team and all of that. As a researcher, I'm not a part of that. All I'm saying is this is what the user needs, right?
But if it was for something like, let's say it's Amazon and you're just selling books at this point. So you made a website, you're making a website, you've got all these books, and then and then people can search through and say, I want a book about Lincoln or something. And then they have to be able to buy it. And so when you release it in an agile way, you would have to release it with all of those things, because you couldn't release it with it.
Yeah, books first with everything that goes through it, right? Then
it would be that you could search it and buy it and get it shipped and all of that. You wouldn't. It's not like, oh, well, we're going to start out where you can look at books, but you can't buy it. You have to be able to use it. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's what that saying Agile is. And if you look at right here, this is the ratings and reviews feature. This is how it goes across each one of these activities. So it's showing you the impact of this release on each one of these. So yes, Monisha.
I was just going to say, in the Amazon example, like when we look at it coming from the product team, a minimum viable product is this product that you're giving them is viable enough to use. So let's say you let them log in and search for something, but you don't let them check out, then it's viable to the point that they understand you have the product. But then you let them get to a shopping cart, but don't let them check out or don't let them pay. That's not a viable product.
Right.
So let them be able to do some task end to end that's of value to them, which makes it viable. And then you build on it.
Perfect.
You could just have a product which lets them know you have this product. So on the app, they can search and say, oh, you know what? They do have these books. And then you might have to go into a bookstore, for example. But the next level will be you let them buy these books. You also decide what genre you want to put out first. And then you have to also make sure that you have the foundations, because usually like payment and things like that require some foundational architecture, and that takes a little time. So you have to decide what is the product, the basic product that'll be of value to your end user. So you can start by just searching, add the shopping cart, and then once you've got the payment vendors lined up, include that. And that's how you build like what we would look at as a minimum viable product.
Right. Thank you for that. Thanks for adding that.